Alright, this is going to be my response to Wolfie's challenge on how the equatorial mount works and how the equinox works on a globe. First things first, I made a ghetto equatorial mount using two ball heads from a couple of tripods that I own. Anyone who knows anything about photography and tripods will know what a ball mount is. They can range from very cheap, $20 to $100 to $200 each. The ones I have, probably about one tripod is worth $100. The other one was worth $200 to $300. So it all depends on you. It's not that hard, not that expensive. These are stuff that I had laying around. I use my phone to calibrate. Calibrate the angle and stuff like that. The only thing it cannot do is it cannot automatically rotate 15 degrees an hour because I don't have the money. But first things first, before I show you what that is, I want to answer a couple questions. What does equatorial mount do? What is the basic mechanics of the mount, and how does it work? First things first, what does an equatorial mount do? What it does is it counter rotates to cancel out the spin of the earth. So as the earth rotates, the equatorial mount will rotate the opposite direction, so the camera will always be facing the same direction relative to space. So this means the sun, stars, the moon. With the equatorial mount that I have, I can basically point it at something, take a picture, an hour later move it 15 degrees, take another picture, it should be relatively in the same position. But because of what I have, it's not going to be very accurate because everything's pretty much by eye. What is the basic mechanics of the mount? Basically what it is, it's a single. You want to have basically an axis of rotation where you can angle it however much you want into the declination of your. Basically, you want to line it up from with your latitude where you are. So basically, you gotta angle it like that. Then from that angle, you want to be able to have a single axis point of rotation. So basically, you angle it to a specific degree based on your latitude, and you want to have, from there, you want to be able to have rotation to allow you just a single axis of rotation. Now, how does it work? This is something that really intrigued me, and this is one of the reasons why I actually took on the challenge, because I actually was very curious on how it worked. So basically what I realized after looking at it myself and talking with Wolfie, is that you're basically aligning this part, the base of your camera or the level, with the equator, and basically all you're really doing is aligning your axis with the axis of the earth. So this is a crude sketch. So basically this line, this will be perfectly in parallel with north. And as Earth rotates this way, your camera's rotating the opposite direction. So it's perfectly, reality of it is the expensive one will perfectly counter rotate the Earth rotations. So you're always going to be facing the same direction relative to space. So main thing is, so this is the degree that you're at for latitude. With this, I did all the math. This angle is the same, this angle is the same, this angle is the same. Simple trigonometry. Basically, you look at the math, this will always be, as long as these lines are parallel, this is the equator. This line is a parallel line to the equator. This angle is the same. This is the tangent, which represents ground. This angle is the same. This angle is the same. This is parallel to the axis. But this is the orientation that you're really going to be looking at. This is your down. This is you as if you're standing straight up, looking straight down. This is the ground. What you want to do is this part right here. You want to angle it so it's parallel to the axis, perpendicular to the equator. So this is the axis of rotation that your camera is going to be mounted on. You want that parallel to the axis of the Earth. And this is parallel to the equator, so you want the base of it perpendicular to the equator. So this is the trigonometry. This is the latitude line. This is the angle of latitude that you are at. So you want to use that to angle up from the ground. All right, this is my model of the globe. It's only a half sphere, or mostly half sphere, doesn't really matter. There's a single axis of rotation. Fortunately, it's not very smooth, but that's the spin of the Earth. It's not the most accurate model, but doesn't matter. This is my equatorial mount. As you can see, I did everything as crude as possible. I just got what I had laying around. You can see this is the base of the mount. This has to be parallel with the equator. This axis of rotation has to be parallel with the Earth's axis of rotation. Now I'll show you how it works. Alright, this is to demonstrate how the equatorial mount works on a globe. There's an axis of rotation on the camera on the equatorial mount, axis of rotation of the globe. How the equatorial mount works is that you have the axis of rotation of the camera parallel to the axis of rotation of the Earth. You have this Earth spins 360 degrees in 24 hours, or 50 degrees an hour. You have the equatorial mount rotate the exact opposite. By doing this, you can have the camera always pointed to the same position in space. Nice thing about the equatorial mount, the camera angle is completely independent of rotation. So if I focus on that street light, I can do it exact same thing I did with the sun. That can represent the moon. Or I can focus on that constellation in the background. As well. As long as you have a steady velocity, angular velocity of the globe, and say angular velocity matched perfectly in sync, the opposite direction of your equatorial mount, you have the axis of rotation parallel with the axis of rotation of the Earth, this position of the stars will not move. Even if I have an angle at an odd angle, like that vent, I can have the vent stay in frame of the camera. Note that any wobble, shaking that you see is due to the precise movement of my hand. Alright, this is my model. It's a globe, obviously. This is going to represent the equinox. As you can see, the tilt is going to be perpendicular to the sun rays, which causes this to be equinox time. If the tilt was towards the sun, that would be summertime in the northern hemisphere. If the tilt was pointed away from the sun, that would be wintertime in the northern hemisphere. But if it's pointed perpendicular, either away from me or towards me, that would be the spring or summer equinox. As you can see, this is the terminator line that represents where everyone will see sunrise as the globe spins eastwards. One thing you may notice is that that terminator line should be almost perfectly lined up with the longitudinal lines. Unfortunately, I am using a flashlight, so it is going to be a little bit smaller. So half the sphere is not going to be perfectly illuminated, but it's a fair representation. As you can see, half of the Earth is going to be illuminated at all times. But because the terminator line follows the longitudinal lines, north and south, it would be perpendicular to that tilt axis of rotation, where everywhere on the Earth will be hitting 12 hours exactly. If I switched it to the summertime position, you can see that the terminator line shifts away from the north and south longitudinal lines, causing different daylight hours. As you can see, the terminator line is right here. Anywhere from here to here will always get a 24-hour sunlight. Anything right here, you can count how many rings there'll be. Each line will represent various hours, but that's it for another time. But if it's perfectly in line with the longitudinal lines, it'll be 180 degrees apart for everywhere on the globe. So that is how you get 12-hour days. Alright, so on the equinox, you're going to have the terminator line, once again, showing sunrise. Notice that terminator line follows the longitude exactly. I have these pins, these toothpicks actually, in line with the latitudinal lines. That demonstrate due east for each point. One thing I notice with a lot of flat earthers when they make mistakes is that they say the sun is over here and everything curves to that point. No, line of sight is straight, so when you look, you're looking straight out. So these are looking east, straight out. So when you get behind the earth, as you turn past the point, you can see the sunrise. So if I'm angled, if I'm standing like this along this point, I can have the sunrise come up due east. Same here, due east. Same here, due east. Along the equator, due east. And along here, due east. And along here, due east. So notice how all of these lines are pointed straight, and they're all pointed towards the sun. And that as the earth rotates, you can see them not looking, all of a sudden they see sunlight in the terminator line, and all the sticks are pointed at sunlight. Note that the latitudinal lines all represent due east. I have lined them, each toothpick up due east. If I do it the opposite side, I rotate the earth to the other side. These are all pointing due east. On the opposite end, they're pointing due west. Once again, as they go, they'll be pointing due west, and now they're in sunset. The only reason why you can get any variation in the angle of due east and due west is because elevation. If you look at the points, at the clay dots carefully, you can notice that as they turn, they still get some sunlight, and they'll be slightly off kiltered. These are very exaggerated. To have mountains this big, you would have mountains larger than Everest. So realize, see how it shifts past the terminator line, and it angles. You have a slight variation of angle, but for the most part, everyone will be seeing sunrise, sunset due west. At the same time, everyone on this side will be seeing sunrise due east. Alright, now I'm going to demonstrate how the sun works on the equinox for the equator. I'm by the sun. You notice all those toothpicks are pointed towards me. All the toothpicks are pointed towards the sun, and what you really want to take a look at is the plane of the equator. All of those toothpicks are in line with each other. So what that means is that these are all in line with the east-west lines of latitude. Note that these lines of latitude represent east and west at every point. So what this means is that the sunrise will due east, go directly overhead, and set due west. So there will be no deviation from due east to due west during the sunrise and sunset between the sunrise and sunset on the equator. Alright, once again, this is me demonstrating how the equinox works on something on the northern hemisphere. You can see all the toothpicks are pointing towards the sun. They are also in line. This one's still looking due east to capture the sunrise. But it's this one that you have to focus on. This is considered noontime. This toothpick right here represents if you're standing on the earth and you were looking straight up. This will also represent the point where it's pointed straight to the center of the earth. This toothpick is in line with pointing at the sun, also parallel to the plane of the equator. To get the latitudinal lines, you have from the center of the line to the equator, center line to where you're at, creates an angle. That is the exact same angle as this right there. So, from where you're standing, looking straight up in the air, you look at, from that point, you look down at the angle of your latitude, you can see the sun at noontime, no matter where you are on the earth. If you go up from the horizon, that's 90 degrees minus your latitude. That works anywhere on the northern hemisphere. Also works anywhere on the southern hemisphere. But you have to look north. This is also why you are looking south of straight up. Because if you realize that this is north, looking straight up, anyone in this direction, that is south. Anything in that direction is north. You can see the line, this line represents north and south. This is looking straight up. This is now below where you're looking at, so you have to look in the southern direction. So once again, this one points straight to the center of the earth. This one is parallel to the equator. That is exactly how the latitude line is calculated, and that is exactly the angle between here and here. Between you looking straight up to the sun during noontime, that is your latitude, and that works with anywhere on the earth.